Apple's future is looking rather sour. The iPhone maker's profits fell short of projections and the company's value has plummeted. Who's to blame? How big a piece is China in the puzzle? And Taiwan leader Tsai Ing-wen calls for Taiwan political parties not to support or even talk about the 1992 consensus, recognizing there is only one China. Will Tsai Ing-wen's hardened separatist ideology save her party's prospects in the future elections? Welcome to The Point, an opinion show coming to you from Beijing. I'm Li Xin. 2019 is off to a sour start for Apple Incorporated. The iPhone maker, America's most valuable company, just a matter of months ago has lost more than $450 billion in market value since last October. In a letter to investors released last Wednesday, Apple CEO Tim Cook announced that for the first time in over a decade, Apple would not meet its forecasts for growth revenue by a long shot. The company lowered its projection to $84 billion, around $9 billion less than its previous projection. A slowing demand for iPhones worldwide and weaker than expected sales, especially in Greater China, was cited as the main factors behind Apple's fall in the letter. Like clockwork, the company's stock fell nearly 10% overnight. So why do Apple's prospects suddenly look so rotten? Is Apple's fall a harbinger of a greater economic slowdown to come? And what does this news mean for China, its economy, and ongoing trade tensions with the United States? Joining me in Beijing is Zhao Hai, research fellow at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, and from Washington, D.C., Steve Pruitt, managing partner at Watts Partners, a corporate and government affairs industry consulting group, and former staff director of the House Congressional Budget Committee. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. As I mentioned, Apple's market value has plummeted by around $450 billion since last October. And to put that into perspective, that's more than the entire value of Facebook, which is worth about $380 billion, and that's also more than the entire value of the GDP of individual countries such as Iran, Austria, or Norway. In the August of last year, however, Apple became the first U.S. company ever to cross the $1 trillion mark in value. So Apple's CEO Tim Cook blamed its fall on slowing iPhone demand, and especially in China. Mr. Pruitt, do you agree? Is this the whole picture or just the slice?
Well, I believe it's a slice. I think obviously Apple is a global player, and if you look at the currently available statistics, cell phone and smartphone sales worldwide are slowing. I mean, the market is just so oversupplied at this current point between Apple and all of its competitors that the prices that Apple had needed to hit those particular target numbers just are not appealing to consumers anymore. So I think while China is certainly the largest segment of what Apple categorizes as its business, it's clearly in a realm where China is not the only problem that Apple is facing.
Mr. Zhao, do you agree with Mr. Pruitt's opinion, and what other core factors do you think are behind Apple's declining performance here?
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Pruitt's points, and I think on top of that, you have to consider the problem of Apple's market strategy. Because of the slowing of global economy and the market condition change, Apple continued to stick to its high price of iPhone in the market. So particularly in emerging markets and in China, when there are other competitors are getting more and more competitive against Apple iPhone. So at this point, iPhone continued to put its price at almost $1,000 or above, and that is causing the shrinking kind of market in China and in other places. I think until Apple find a solution to this changing market environment and adjust its high price strategy, for example, continue its low price iPhone series, there's very little chance that iPhone can continue to sell in terms of units in other markets.
What about the impact of the or the vitality of the Chinese economy? Because some Western media have pointed to China's consumers spending considerably less. For instance, saying China's, the Guardian report on the subject saying China's famed manufacturing sector is set to decline in 2019, and further weakness in retail sales were more evidence that all is not well, and China's consumers are reading the ruins. So, Mr. Zhao, how much is that a factor in the declining sales for Apple?
Well, I think that's definitely a factor, because other than cell phones, if you look at the car market and looking at other consumer products, there's a slowing down in the overall Chinese market. So I think that's a contributing factor to the slowing of iPhone sales in China. However, again, as I said, Apple company is not adjusting its strategy, particularly in China, adapting to this new environment of economic slowing down and the middle class spending less on iPhones, and also because the iPhone and other smartphones have very high functionality, and people continue to use it, not changing their phones year over year. So I think they need a strategy change to adapt to the new environment in China.
Mr. Pruitt, how much are domestic factors, domestic U.S. economic or policy factors that might have contributed to the weaker demands of iPhones here in the greater China markets? And do you see, for instance, President Trump's trade policy towards China having somewhat of a negative effect on the sales of or the demand for products like iPhone in China?
Well, I would certainly contend that the trade policies that are existent between the U.S. and China right now are very problematic and are pressing the Chinese population as the American population in terms of their ability to buy these discretionary items like cell phones. They are indeed driving consumers worldwide to make wiser choices. They're forcing consumers, as my colleague there pointed out, to use their phones longer. Once Apple went through the exercise of acknowledging and then changing their policy about slowing down phones to encourage people to buy newer ones, that has opened up a whole nother option for consumers. So that and the trade policies, I think, taken in total, are going to dampen the demand not only for iPhones, but for just about anything else that is involved in international trade.
Yeah, Mr. Zhao, you wanted to add something here.
Yeah, I think the iPhone sales slowing down in China happened long before the trade dispute between U.S. and China. If you look at the statistics, iPhone sales pretty much stagnated since 2015. And after that, the share of Chinese market in the overall iPhone market is steadily coming down. So I think to blame the trade war is kind of however, I agree. I think the trade war has impacted people's expectations for their future income and also their economic confidence, and therefore has a major impact on iPhone sales as well in China.
Yeah, what's the impact? Because according to a report from the street, according to Strategy Analytics, Huawei, the Chinese phone maker, shipped 52 million smartphones in the third quarter of 2018, representing a year-over-year increase of a third compared to 47 million iPhones Apple shipped during the same period of time. I want to ask Mr. Zhao here, how much has the trade friction and growing mistrust and displeasure, let's say, in the hearts of many Chinese consumers against U.S. products played in this whole picture by supporting more Chinese products vis-a-vis American brands?
Well, again, Huawei's problem has long preceded the U.S.-China trade dispute. U.S. government has forbid Huawei to sell its handsets in the U.S. market for a long time because of security concerns. That actually promoted, pushed Huawei to promote its phones in other markets because their resource can be concentrated in the Chinese market and also in European markets and also in Africa and Latin America. So you see the continuous growth of Huawei and other Chinese phones in other markets other than U.S. market, and they become much more competitive overall. So I think, again, the trade dispute has an impact. However, these are long-term trend, and Chinese companies are adapting technology more quickly.
Mr. Pruitt, your take on this issue, how much do you think Chinese sentiments have contributed to this increasing sales of Chinese smartphones, which are also very good phones, by the way? I do not know whether you use a Huawei or you use an iPhone, but I can tell you Chinese phones are very competitive, not just price-wise, but also function-wise.
Well, I do travel quite a bit in Asia, and I've seen the Chinese phones and the other offerings that are out there, and they're nice. They do pretty much everything that the iPhone does. They just don't come with the kind of applications and services that Apple has built their marketplace on. But I do think that clearly, if you look at what the Chinese companies are doing by expanding their market footprint to other parts of the world, when and if we ever get beyond this trade conflict, they're going to come out much better positioned, unfortunately, for Americans, because they will have a standing foothold in those other markets. I think one of the problems with the isolationist moves that we're seeing in America right now is that we are giving away a lot of business opportunities.
And meanwhile, U.S. President
Donald...
Yes, sorry for interrupting, Mr. Pruitt. U.S. President Donald Trump has said on Friday that he wasn't concerned about Apple's future, but wants CEO Tim Cook to move Apple's supply chain back to the U.S. He says, Apple makes their product in China. I told Tim Cook, who's a friend of mine, make your products in the United States. What will be the implication if Apple really withdraws its assembly lines from China? Mr. Pruitt.
Well, I don't see that happening. The cost to do that is probably prohibitive, quite frankly. And I believe that for Apple to do so would really send the wrong signal to much of their marketplace outside of the U.S. I think ultimately, while a lot of what is said in America is for great entertainment value right now, from a policy perspective, it's not well thought through, and unfortunately, probably not resulting in good overall business practices for companies. I think we've got a lot of issues going on in America right now, and there is a great deal of tension between both the business community, the political community, and quite frankly, our U.S. president. And it's probably going to get worse as our domestic politics truly engage now that we've got a new Congress and other things going on. So all of that's going to, I think, put greater pressure on the trade and business decisions that our global companies here in America have to make.
Okay, we are going to leave it there, running out of time. Many thanks to my two guests, Zhao Hai, Research Fellow at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, and in Washington, D.C., Steve Pruitt, Managing Partner at Watts Partners.